What is up, guys? Welcome back. Okay, so we've had a huge update over the past few days, and I kind of want to talk about some of the important stuff here. So I definitely want to get into the Drakas and what I think about the Drakas. I also want to kind of just quickly cover some of the other additions to the game. And so if you just want to see the Draka review, then just go ahead, you can go ahead and fast forward through and look for where I start talking about the Draka. I'll probably talk about the fire one last because there's some confusion going on with his skill. But yeah, so first of all, we've got this harvest festival going on. And in the harvest festival, the way you kind of earn these gold coins or gold cookies or crackers or something is you farm for them in story mode. So definitely get in there and farm story mode, because even though this is a really bad time to farm story mode because you need a lot of gold in order to get the Drakas right now. But you do need the cookies because there's some really good prizes if you meet your cookie requirement. The order in which I would pick these up, I would definitely probably focus on the Holy Gleam first. After the Holy Gleam, you can pick either between the RGB Gleam or the Nat5, depending on which one you feel like you need. Otherwise, I would go for, and after those, I would probably go for the Astro Gems next. After the Astro Gems, I might pick up the 4 or 5-star egg. And you can choose if you want the 4 or 5-star egg over the Astro Gems. I guess it depends on what you need in the game, but expect to get a 4-star, a Nat4 and not a Nat5. You'll be really lucky if you do pull a Nat5 from that. Otherwise, the other stuff is kind of depending on what you need. Energy is always helpful. Unfortunately, the costume, the Hanbok, and I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, I apologize, but that is for a normal Nike. A normal Light Vic / Nike. So if you have a Super Evolve one, you can't use it for whatever reason. So I have no idea why they did that or didn't give us 2 where our Super Evolve version could actually wear it too. Who knows? But that is just a visual item. So you pick it up wherever you feel like you need it, just for commemoration's sake. So if you're here year 3, you can say I have this costume sitting in my box that I can't even use because now I have a Super Evolved Vic. So yeah, guys, I don't know. I guess it's more toward newer players. And then the Mystic Fabrics are probably the lowest things that should be on your list of what to pick up. I think we earn them in the monthly quest, and also they're, if you really want a costume, they're not overly expensive to grab. So yeah, guys, that would be the order in which I would pick those goodies up. You can do whatever you want, but those would be my suggestions. And the other thing we kind of got is we've got our first male Super Evolved monster, and it is a very farmable Anubis. So it makes a lot of sense that they would make the first one a monster that is fairly farmable. The Mihos were the first ones, of all times, first Super Evolved ones of all time. Even if you didn't have light dark, you can still farm the other colors and make use of their extra stat. But yeah, guys, so to kind of get into the Drakas next, I'm gonna cover the fire one last, like I said, because he has weird stuff going on with him. So stay tuned for that. To talk about the water one first. So, water is interesting. I would say that, with these Drakas, Nestia did a really good video on these. So if you want more information, I would definitely check out his video. But yeah, so I would say the water one is probably geared more toward Titans. So what she will help you do is kind of get more of a death break, so get more damage off, and get more of an attack down on your monster, which is always important, so that you can kind of both deal a little bit more damage and have a little bit more survivability on your team in Titans. So definitely probably geared more toward Titans than anything else in the game. Of course, as always, use it where you like. The other one would be the Wood Draka. So Wood Draka is kind of interesting. We do not have a whole lot of RGB aggressors. Most of them tend to fall within
the light dark arena, especially the favored dark Miho, especially at a super evolved form. So the thing about, you know, the dark Miho versus the Draka is she does have a little bit less HP, but as all dark monsters do, they tend to make up for lower damage with the higher, you know, for lower maybe base damage. Usually, sometimes, a lot of times they even have high base damage with the extra 50% crit damage that they have. So you probably have more damage potential if you're running a dark Miho as opposed to this wood Draka. But the thing about wood monsters is they tend to have higher base resist. So they're more like, so it is easier to generally build resist on the wood monsters than it is to build it on light dark monsters, which tend to come, and there are a few that don't, but most of them tend to come with 0% resist, especially the attack base, the ones that are geared more toward being attackers and not sustainers, like you know, healers and things like that. So there is that where if you need something with more resist on it, it would be easier to build the wood Draka. He does have about 10k more in HP, so he still can do some pretty good damage if you're looking for a team that has its own self-sustain and that maybe will go a little bit longer, but has a lot of heals on it and can deal kind of like a balanced amount of damage to it. So next to kind of discuss the light Draka. So I do think that the light Draka is kind of interesting. It's kind of hard to say exactly where they intend her to be used, but I do think what they kind of expect is, maybe, I don't know if this is what they expect, but this is what would make the most sense to me, is considering using her on, say, a non-dark Titan team. So if you think about it, guys, and this, you know, this might be fairly low level Titans if you need a filler monster, or if you need to help bolster maybe like your light Titan team. But if you think about her skill sets, she's got a weakened skill on her first passive attack, and then it takes her an entire SP bar in order to get to the elemental edge. And usually with elemental edge, you know, being able to get it off as quickly as possible is really helpful, you know, in any scenario, because you can basically take a monster with a moral boost and elemental edge anywhere, and they will you know, do very well, you know, other than if maybe they have an elemental weakness and they die, they might run the risk of dying on the stage. Otherwise, that elemental that moral boost elemental edge monster generally does very well wherever you run them, and ends up making a good farmer. Now this skill set is a little bit odder because you have an elemental edge, but it takes a lot longer. It's going to take you a long time in order to build that skill gauge generally, as opposed to where you have a moral boost, which is why I do think in the Titans arena that's very helpful, because once she gets a blue soul, she can deal very decent damage, and you know, she's also pretty easy to build on crit, because lights have a little bit of extra crit rate associated with them. They're not quite as good as a dark, which has a 50% extra crit damage boost. But with this monster, both of her skills are actually very useful in a non-dark Titan team, because on the first skill you can have a status effect, so both a weakened skill, which is both the attack down and the def down, and it can be stacked with normal attack down and def down. And then when she gets one blue soul, her gauge is full, and she can make use of an elemental edge and deal pretty decent damage to the Titan. So that is where I think she probably has a place in this game. So next, to kind of get into the dark Draka, and then after that we will go over the controversial fire Draka. So with the dark Draka, I would say I think he's geared more towards, say, a PvP team. So generally in Ashramon League or in CVC. That's probably where his place is. And I think what his benefit is, so if you think about some of the staples of PvP, for a long time, say the Wood Leo and the and after the Wood Leo, when people got her, the Fire Odin became pretty fair staples in a PvP team. So you know, they had pretty good leader skills, and then they also had a death break on their, you know, a death break and then an attack down, you know, when they proc them. And I actually think this guy kind of brings those two monsters together, in addition to say something like a water nightmare. So I don't think the weaken skill is quite the same, you know, percent lowering as a direct defense break or a direct attack down, but it is kind of that combination of the two on the first skill, and she's got a very good leader skill, and then you can kind of throw in a seal if she happens to get her you know, her active up. So I would say that this monster is probably meant for a PvP defense team, and kind of in line with a mixture between your Wood Leo / Fire Odin mixed with a Water Nightmare. So that would be my assessment of the Dark Draka. Next would be the fire. So we're going to definitely talk about the fire one. So the confusion with the fire one is the pure skill. What does the pure skill do? Because apparently it does not do what they described it as doing, which is 100% ignores enemy defense. So apparently right now what has come out is that it probably is that what we think it does is it ignores the base defense of a monster. It does not ignore the defense gems that are on a monster. So the defense gems still apply. The base defense does not. And it's a skill buff, and the skill buff seems to carry over until the second turn. So you make use of the skill buff during the active, when the active goes off. So he gets more damage off on his active, and then he also gets a little more damage off on his passive first turn skill if it comes after the initial active skill went off the second turn. So that actually has nice application with a siphon gem set, because with siphon gems you generally do want to increase the attack of your monster. So if he's already buffing his attack, that has incredible synergy with a siphon set. Also, and then the siphon set has incredible synergy with getting his really high attacks, his really high damage dealing active off. So there's just a lot of synergy, I think, that goes along with this monster and a siphon set. Now, where you would use him probably depends on how well you can get him into PvP. So I think he fills two weird niches in this game. So one niche that he kind of fills is the fact that his pure skill fills is the fact that it is a lot harder to kill HP aggressors than it is to kill defense aggressors in some cases. So like if you are able to get a defense break off on, and this is in this scenario, if you can get a defense break off on a defense aggressor, generally that makes them extremely easy to kill, because they have no other stat that can make up for the fact that their both their survivability and their attack stat has just been lowered. Because you do not build defense or you do not build HP on a defense aggressor at all, generally, unless you're trolling and you're okay with taking less damage or with dealing less damage. The other thing is, and conversely with the HP aggressors, if you death break an HP aggressor, she still has a lot of HP to make up for the loss in survivability from a defense break. So they don't always die quickly enough if you're able to land a defense break on HP aggressor. Now, of course, it depends on how well the aggressor is built, and how much damage you have on your team. But in general, if there's a death break on a defense aggressor and an HP aggressor, the HP aggressor has a better chance of surviving that, because of the survivability stat that you were forced to build on those two monsters. And I think what this pure skill is geared toward is trying to fill that gap where, to try and make it a little more of even playing field between the HP and defense aggressors. The other place in the game I think this guy fills is something I think that I really feel that 433 or the devs are testing out or want us to explore, and that is this idea of an attack-based group moral booster. So I kind of mentioned this in one of my earlier Tina videos, because I feel that that's kind of what the intention was for the light Tina. So the light Tina, I think, was the first monster that we saw this in, and that is having a moral booster who is more attack-based, or one of the first monsters we've seen that's pretty achievable to have that kind of skill set. And this monster, I think, falls in line with that kind of thought process, maybe to a greater degree, because she is a Nat5, and her skill sets will deal a lot more damage than what we see with the light Tina. Her stats are much better, but it still this kind of falls in line with this idea of more of a very fast attack-based group moral boost team, and it probably you probably generally want to run multiples of this type of group moral booster, to kind of boost each other. And the gem sets, since this is definitely an attacker, you would kind of go toward the typical attack type gem sets, in addition to maybe running a siphon on one of them, because I do think, like I said before, I do think the siphon has some interesting synergy with the skill sets, in addition to just the typical crit, ruin, crit damage gems, but yeah, guys, I do think there are these two portions of the game that the devs are trying to fill with the Fire Draka. One of them is a faster PvP team with group moral boosters that are geared much more toward attack, so you're less likely to have more of a sustained team going, and then in addition to that, kind of another way of trying to address the differences between the how status effects apply, or deal with survivability of the defense aggressors and the HP aggressors. So yeah, guys, that is my take on these new Nat5s that we have available to us. And I'm going to say I'm actually glad that I hate that we have to sacrifice a huge number of Nat5s in order to make these monsters, but I am glad that it's not part of the Nat5 pool, because as the Nat5 pool increases in terms of eggs and in astrogen pools and 10+1s, as that pool increases, the chances of getting something you want decreases, because there are more monsters you can pull. So I do like this idea of making Nat5s available through different methods, as opposed to just through pools. I'm really impressed with the Drakas. I think they're beautiful monsters. Whoever designed them, I think they did a great job with these monsters. We've seen some in the past that kind of, you wonder what the artist was thinking, but these are definitely beautiful monsters, and I appreciate all the work that they put into them graphically. I do think, thinking about their skill sets, a day after they were released, I do actually think they all have a definite place in the game somewhere. If you think of, and I suspect that a lot of thought went into their skill sets, and in looking at some of the current meta of the game, and some of the things that people generally do in different portions of the game. So I hope that helped you guys make your decision on which Draka you want. I'm not going to tell you which one to get. You got to make that decision for yourself. But if you like the video, definitely hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not, and I will see you next time.